shall we proceed? I'm noting that the numbers are increasing, so thank you, colleagues, for joining us. An important and exciting topic being presented by one of our very own from Yumi, who I'll mention in a moment. So it's important that we don't waste too much time with the likes of myself this afternoon. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Prof. Richard Cook. I'm the head of the Department of Family Medicine and Primary Care. And I'm delighted that we're continuing with our DFMPC professional learning series that's presented in conjunction with the Center for Health Sciences Education. And I remind you that we have we present different themes around health sciences education, each batched into three different sessions. The first, a journal club around health professionals education, that particular theme of the day. The second, a Tech Tuesday, and the third, a learning workshop. And we've got a couple of exciting topics down the line the rest of this year, including the integration of training and service, OSCEs, workplace-based assessments, 21st century learning. But we're delighted today to be speaking to student-centered curriculum design. We tweaked our order a little bit in that we really were pleased to have Dr. Carol Hartman last week speak to us around a Tech Tuesday, in particular the Loop software. But today we continue in the same theme of student-centered curriculum design with Dr. Mokachana leading us in a journal club. Dr. Mokachana is, of course, the director of UMI, of our Unit for Undergraduate Medical Education, and is really representative of the excellence with regards health sciences education that we find in that space. And it is, sorry, somebody if could mute. Thank you, and not least developed under her good guidance and leadership as the director of UMI. So Mantra, thank you so much for your time with us this afternoon, and thank you for your participation. Over to you.
Thank you, Richard, for the kind words, and thank you for everyone for taking their time to be with us this afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. Yanis, can I maybe put a slide up? My computer sometimes does its own thing, but I hope it will behave today.
Sure, Mantua. Please go ahead.
You see now it's already doing its own thing. It doesn't want to do what I wanted to do, Yanis. Are you seeing all the slides or just the main slide?
I'm only seeing the main slide with the book.
Okay, all right. Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. I was drawn to this article because I believe that feedback from students regarding the delivery in the program and curriculum development and so on is very important. I have also realized that over the past 5 years, the students have been reluctant to give feedback. And maybe when you send for evaluation of a course, about 40 of the students out of a class of 350 will be responding. And they actually now prefer to do this through their class reps. And then I kept on asking myself several questions. Is it because we are asking the wrong questions? Is it because we are administering the questions long after they have done the block? Is it fear of being victimized, even if the forms are anonymized, in case they say something nasty about the block? Is it because we are not instituting the changes they would like to see after they've actually given us recommendations? I've had the pleasure in the last few years I've been here. In 2017, we ended up modifying the BCM block, which is the first block in GEMP 1, with the assistance of students, because I was actually quite new at the time in this space, coming from the clinical space. in that block, there used to be less than 30% pass rate for many years. And when I saw that, I was quite startled as to what's happening. And then we reorganized the block with the students, and it worked well for a year or two. But then the second block, which is lots, started also giving trouble. And yet it used to be the block where students would get 80, 90%. And with the students' evaluation, we realized that there's a problem. So we then created a block that combines both BCM and LOTS with the assistance of students' feedback, as well as with the assistance of the expertise of Dr. Hartman, because this is her the part that she likes quite a lot, curriculum development. So we ended up creating a block called Basic Concepts in Medicine and Health, which runs over 12 weeks. It's part 1 and part 2. And I must say this all occurred because of the students' evaluation and help. But those evaluations are declining. So that is why I then ended up thinking that this article titled The Student Curriculum Review Team, How We Catalyze Curricular Changes Through a Student-Centered Approach is quite relevant, or it resonates with me. They ended up with this because they were also looking at other universities where just doing questionnaires or surveys was not good enough. And it was also one-sided because you end up with mainly faculty posing the questions and students having to just respond to the questions that the faculty is posing. Other universities added focus groups, but again, let's say with our current class of 389 in GEMP 1, who do you then choose to do the focus group? Because you can't do it with the whole class. And with others, it would be a focus group facilitated by students. With some, it would be the faculty actually facilitating or moderating the focus group discussion. So with this article, they, in Johns Hopkins School of Clinical Medicine, they then decided to look into creating or bringing together students that would be called Student Curriculum Review Team to actually help with the review of their programs. And the goals of this team was mainly to engage the entire student body in a two-way course improvement process, as opposed to being just one-sided. They would gather feedback in a manner that is not influenced by faculty. They would ensure that student feedback is not just presented but discussed and changes are made, and they would document the whole process that has gone into that place. I would just like to maybe go back a little bit and start with the slide that was put up by Dr. Hartman last week, where she was trying to actually, in a summary form, in one slide, to show what is then teacher-centered learning or curriculum, and also learner-centered on the right-hand side, and trying to reach the balance in between. Concentrating on the one on the left, the teacher-centered, because I think that's where we are. It's mainly called The Banking Concept by Paulo Freire. And this is what the banking concept is all about. In the banking concept, the teacher teaches, or maybe even before going there, I would just say in summary, the teacher makes deposits which the students patiently receive, memorize, and regurgitate. The scope of the students only extends as far as receiving, filing, and storing the deposits from the teacher. So with this banking concept, the teacher teaches and the students are taught. The teacher knows everything and the students know nothing. The teacher thinks and the students are merely thought about. The teacher talks and the students listen meekly. The teacher disciplines, the students are disciplined. The teacher chooses and enforces his or her choice. All the students do is to comply. The teacher acts, and the students have an illusion of acting through the teacher's action. The teacher chooses content, and the students will have to just adapt to it. The teacher confuses authority of knowledge with his or her professional authority, and this is in opposition of the student's freedom. The teacher is the subject of learning, and the students are mere objects. So that's why I thought maybe it's about time we talked about how we could involve our students, and I took the liberty of inviting recent graduates. So far I've seen one, the other one I think maybe is probably busy. And I've also invited the MSc, the president as well as the academic officer, because I thought it's time for us to start looking into how we can involve the students in both curriculum review and co-creation of the curriculum. So that was the main reason why I thought this article is important to us. And this aspect we've already spoken about. So in this article, what these people would then do, this was done in the preclinical years. So any students, in our example, for instance, it could be a GEMP 1 or a GEMP 2 student, would voluntarily join this team, and you can hop off or on anytime. So there are several steps that they would take, where the first step would be to gather and review course evaluation data. So the faculty would send an evaluation form to the students, and when the students have responded to that form, it is then sent to this team of students, who would then look at the repetitive positive comments as well areas to improve. After they've looked at that, they would then call a town hall meeting for students to come, and this is done at lunchtime. And by the way, these students, this team is not paid to do that. There's no incentive. The main incentive is to make sure that their courses are actually improved. So in that town hall meeting, they would then present what was coming up as a positive, as well as where the need for improvement is. They would then divide the group into smaller groups, and the members of the review team will be joining those smaller groups to just hear how they can actually solve whatever areas where improvement is needed. So they would be looking for solutions amongst those students. After that, they would then write a report. Even before writing a report, from what the students have said, they would then try and present to the student body through a survey. If, for instance, it was to say, okay, we need to change the BCM block completely, and maybe do we combine it with lots or not? So they would send a survey that would say, agree or disagree, so that every student in the class then, or even those that would want to respond to the survey, also comment there. Because in the town hall, not everyone is able to actually attend. I'm just looking at Shira's comment. As you noted, Manto, a first step would be to encourage students to respond to evaluation questionnaires, because response rates, particularly online, are universally low. Yes, it's true. That is something that we'll probably have to discuss here as to how we really improve that. So after they've sent this the survey to the students, then the students would say whether they agree or disagree with the change that needs to be instituted. And I'll give you an example of what they did. It's where they actually reviewed foundations of human anatomy as an example here. And the question was, were there any topics that should be covered more extensively in this course? And what came up is that there's inadequate instruction on neck anatomy. So they did all this process, including the town hall, And after that, put out a survey to students that say, do you agree or disagree? And 94% of them agreed. And they then go and present this to the course director and the dean for all these things to then be done, but also faculties involved to discuss what the students are suggesting and how it needs to be done. And what they did after reviewing this course, for instance, they then went and evaluated what was done this was in 2012. And then in 2013, they evaluated by sending questions to the lecturers to find out how they felt. Was it useful? Was it not useful? And the majority of them, I think it was not a big number, but they said it was very useful. And some said somewhat useful, and a few said they were neutral about it. And they did the same thing with the students as well. And their responses were more positive. So then, while we're there, I thought maybe I can then ask the questions that we can then start discussing and talking about, or reflecting or asking questions. Maybe you would also be asking questions from the floor. How do you evaluate your courses? And as Shira has said, how do we encourage students to respond to those evaluation questionnaires? And what are the response rates in your own classes? And if it's not great, what are you doing about it? And how would you actually try and sort this out? Can I then open this to the floor for a discussion? Shira, I'm going to start with you.
Mantua. Okay. I can always talk.
Yeah, I know.
So evaluation is a really thorny issue, particularly because it's the bridge between an entire group of students, and many of whom don't have a voice. They don't want a voice, but they certainly don't share their voice. And the staff, who often use evaluation not for curriculum development purposes, but for perhaps their own developmental purposes, for probation or for promotion. And that's a cultural phenomenon within our institution and almost worldwide that I think needs changing. And a lot of people are recognizing that feedback needs to be positive with regard to self-development, but also with regard to program development. So at WITS, we have been through a little change with regard to the evaluation processes, which are all the quality assurance handled by CLTD, our main campus. And they, for years, have compared and contrasted not only individuals, but also faculties with regard to course outcomes and feedback from students. Now, the thing is that they always used to have a paper process, and now we've gone on an online process. I do have to tell everybody, and this is a teaser for the webinar that we're doing with CLTD next week, that the response rates in the online questionnaires are way smaller than even the paper response rates. So the first thing I think that we have to think about, particularly in our faculty, because it's so far-flung, is to work on students' identity in terms of understanding what it is to respond to an evaluation questionnaire, either to the course, which is what you're obviously focusing on here, and making the course better for others, or with regard to a lecturer. So that a lecturer can get feedback, and it can be qualitative feedback to improve their engagement with students. So, yeah, so the process really has to be that our students are engaged with giving feedback. And a lot of people say that in closing the loop, in other words, if students see something is done as a result of the feedback, that strengthens the desire to give the feedback. I personally think we actually need to give it as part of our orientation with students, is what's expected of you with regard to feedback and why we ask for it and how to evaluate, because students aren't taught how to evaluate. It's a bit like learning how to peer review is learning how to review others, and they just go for it off their own heads. And I'm not sure that that's very useful to the either program or to the academic. So there's a lot with regard to evaluation that we can work on, but within your program, I think that you have a good connection with your students and you can start educating them as to why you want the feedback and how useful the feedback will be, and that action will happen as a result of the feedback. And so I think that this article really pulls out for you a way of engaging with students in order to understand what works and what doesn't work. Because after all, you've got a huge program with lots of input from many people and places. And it's very hard to keep a quality assurance handle on what's happening if you don't get feedback from on the ground in the class. So that's a kind of summary of where we are and I think where we could be going with regard to student feedback in helping to guide curriculum change.
Thank you. Thank you, Shira. Any other comments? I see Charlene's there. Charlene, were you wanting to voice that out while Shira is there? So do you want to say something, Charlene?
Hi, Dr. M. So I was really just posing a question. So I hear the concept of, having your course evaluated, which is great. But, for some that academics that have been tasked to, for instance, design or develop a more blended form of a course, now that we're in Ulwazi, how are they particularly being accommodated in this process when we've had such a rushed implementation, for instance, especially within the Faculty of Health Sciences, where you were given 6 weeks to kind of move along, where we've then foregone that process of design, research, content development, testing it on a group of students, getting feedback, improving your site, and then finalizing to go live in 2022. So we've missed all of that process. And so now we're stringing our students along in this whole process of design, research, trialing and erroring, figuring out the new LMS on top of a group of students that weren't used to working on an LMS to begin with. So how is, for instance, if I get a call, an invitation for someone to evaluate my course right now, when I'm still in this process and I'm stringing along and my students in this process as well, and how objective is that feedback then from the students?
Okay, for me, it's just going to be from the top of my head. I would say, if I were you, then I would, I'll ask Shira later, but if I were you, I would then take it as a progression towards growth. So it shouldn't be something that actually penalizes you now, but you would probably do then the same thing next year and see where you are. I think that's what is meant to happen, not to actually penalize people. Shira, do you want to comment on that? And then I'll go to Vesna. I don't know if Sinatemba wants to say something because Sinatemba is not muted.
Okay, I would like to come back to Charlene, and I agree with what you said with regard to evaluations being developmental. So the first thing is I agree wholeheartedly. I think across the university, lecturers, people on the ground who've had to actually put these courses together have voiced their absolute displeasure at having to do it in such a hurry. And it is now a fait accompli. We're dealing with it, but it was not ideal. And that's a really good example of how institutional culture can force a change, literally force all of us to use something different and to manage with it. So, Charlene, the first point to you is that from my perspective, I think we need to uncouple the current evaluations that are happening from the entire university process. So I don't think that we should be comparing anything. And one of the pushes that we've had in our faculty is to make these entirely qualitative. In other words, you don't get a number because that way you can't compare numbers across people or categories or courses. And I think that that speaks much better to teacher development. So if your course doesn't get such a great response, then obviously you can start seeing where the problems are and you can build on it. What I do have to say, though, in Ulwazi is it gives students much more of a voice, particularly if you've got a course discussion forum where anybody can post anything about the course at any time. And that allows them to interact with you in a less formal evaluatory sense, where it becomes clear what students are struggling with and what's not clear in the instructions, etc. So we actually need to look at good management of a course on Ulwazi as a way for getting informal or behind the scenes feedback from students as to what's working and what's not. And that is also something that you can use in terms of your reflection in your teaching portfolio, because the whole point about the portfolio is to show your development. And it's quite fine to write, we were thrown into this, and yeah, the process was very difficult. And it's fine for students to be not forgiving. And I mean, I think a lot of the staff are not forgiving either. It was a really hard transition. Having said that, it's something that is now within their capability to use. And students, as you'll notice from year to year, will accept it easier and easier because it's something that the year before them had to do. Students always hate being the first year to do anything. So I do think that in terms of designing your own teaching portfolio, you can show the development and show the things that you changed. And that is absolutely a good way to show that we're improving our teaching as we go. If you're looking at the courses, though, I think it's really important for students to understand that what they respond can make a change in the course. And that's, again, closing the loop. Thanks, Mantra.
Thank you very much, Shira. Thanks. Vesna, your hand has been up for some time now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I enjoyed listening to you and to Shira, especially my lecturer. So I just want to address you on a few points that you and Shira mentioned it, because I'm very passionate about this. That's why I'm joining you also. But however, I want to tell you, as a chair of transformation for Faculty of Health Sciences, I would welcome something like this, and we would support you. And we can actually reinforce it through our student representatives and try to increase the number of responses. But it is so true what Shira says. Students do not respond. Another thing is, any change of culture is very difficult. And what was done with Ulwazi was, forgive me, Shira, for saying this, but I consider it as a change of culture. and it was very rapid and forced onto us. And yes, one can say that it was very forceful, but I enjoyed it as the new method to me, because I have learned from Shira and the other lecturers in postgraduate diploma in health sciences education that you basically, when you're changing a culture, educational culture, sometimes the rapid changes come and you need to learn to adapt. And we have adapted. And I must tell you, Shira, at one point, I was like a big gogo doing Ulwazi, but I managed. And I wanted to say to Charlene, I feel your pain because I'm still struggling. And I understand what you're saying about the students, because the students resisted the most. They resist more than the staff. But it was necessary, and we've done it. And now we have to learn how much Ulwazi has changed us and how we can change it. I would welcome the service and feedback on the change of the curriculum from students. I think it would be great impact. But I think the only problem that we had is, how do we make the students recognize how important is that? And there I see we should be doing marketing, and we should be saying, this is why you should participate. Your response is very important to us. So to me, I will support you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Vesna. Thank you. Aviwe?
Thank you, Dr. M. Very, very interesting article. I thought I would just share what we've been doing in the program and answer the questions on the slide.
Okay.
So we do have course evaluations, and before COVID, they were paper-based. So we put together questions to say, what have you liked most about the block? What do you like least about the block? And do you have any suggestions for improvement? So before COVID, we would give them the sheet after a test. So in that moment, after they've just written a test on campus, then we give them the sheets. and they would actually fill it in. They would take time and they would populate the evaluation. And then now that we've transitioned to the online space, I try to copy that version and put it onto like a Google form or a Microsoft form, and truly the response rate has decreased. And it speaks to what we're talking about now, in that, you know, what are the reasons for that and how do we sort of address that? But the response rate has decreased. Some of the students have answered my block 1 evaluation, but I think it's hardly even 40%. I might have to check again, but they haven't already responded. So for question number 3, we haven't really addressed it as yet because we've just identified that the response rate has decreased. But we usually give the students the evaluation form after each block. So after about 3 months or so, they get a form. So it would be interesting to hear of suggestions and ideas.
Thank you, Aviwe. Yes, for me also, when I really want something from the whole class, I would stand at the door after I've given a talk and then give them paper-based, and you would then end up with everyone doing something about it and say, just put it in the box. But with online, it becomes a major problem. Yanis, I can't read what you've put there. My Google eyes are not able to see that.
Oh, sorry, I just actually responded to what Ashad mentioned. So at the end of each session, although in Uwazi, I'm still trying to figure out how to exactly do that. But at the end of what Shira mentioned about the continuous informal feedback, we have been doing that in HSS to, at the end of the session, have a section where they can post question, comments, and feedback. And most of the time, students would use that section to say this was a fascinating section, or it was very informative, and so forth, or reflect a bit more about what they've learned. But other times they would say there was a technical difficulty with the video, or so they would give feedback about the sessions as well. The one thing that I'm specifically looking at exploring in now is to sort of embed Teams or Discord, where you can hashtag feedback or hashtag question or comment, and then you can compile your feedback as well. But we're still busy exploring the embedding of that. But yeah, so the image was just to show that the last part of each session has a question component.
Okay, thank you very much, Yanis. Stephen?
Hi, yes, hi there. Thanks for this. I was actually going to say the exact same thing that Yanis did, to point out that we started doing this immediate session feedback after each session. And what I think it does, in addition to getting us kind of this informal feedback, is it gives a little bit of ownership over to the students too. We get a sense of who's actually working through the session, even if the students just write a one-liner like, yeah, that was great, or I really enjoyed it. It wraps up what we're doing on a gradual base, a continuous basis as we're moving through course content. The other thing that we did in addition to this was to try shift the way that we think about the platform of evaluation. So we divided our content into different modules. It's similar to a clinical block or something like that. But so after a number of weeks, the students would then give feedback on a bunch of content. And we asked them to do like creative things. So we gave them 3 pictures and we said, which picture best describes your experience of this course, and describe it to us, or select a picture that would best encapsulate how you felt about your learning journey. Also, I don't know, maybe that sounds very wishy-washy, but it was interesting to see because it doesn't become so bland. I think if all courses are creating kind of these standardized sort of responses, students also have standardized responses back, or standardized questions result in standardized responses often. So it's just 2 thoughts from our courses.
Okay, thank you very much. Prof. Catherine Burns, your response is so long. Can you maybe talk to us about it?
Okay, sure. Thank you. I hope I'm not going out of turn. I can't see everyone that well today, so forgive me if I'm pushing ahead.
No, you are not.
Okay, I found your presentation and also the reading very, very interesting. And one of the things that I know everyone is struggling with is trying to figure out a way how to motivate students to feel part of this. And one of the things that I've picked up in the last year and a half particularly, and I see this is also in the article, which came out quite a bit before we went to this almost complete online learning space, is that students withdraw their energy from feedback or requests for feedback when they feel that lecturers and academics aren't giving them what they feel is almost continuous feedback on their work. Of course, this is challenging with the pressure of all of our work. And what I discern from the reading is that it's not only assessment feedback, but it's sort of formative and continuous feedback, even if it's very quick. And so I've wondered if there's a way that we can do more even than we do. And I know I'm amongst pioneers here, but we can use the tools at our disposal to offer short forms of feedback, which could include quick comments and sort of spark ideas, which don't have grade assessments in them, and in that sense don't carry peril with them, but give students the real sense of being heard and being I don't want to say observed, but that they are seen and heard. And also, and this is linked to this, more peer evaluation, which I know that online portals like Moodle really allow. And I know that some of the, from what I can see, some of the functions in Ulwazi also allow this. So it's not peers disciplining each other or correcting each other, but it's peers talking to each other and saying, well done, or thumbs up, or that's an interesting idea. And then academics being able to do that a bit too, with a record of that kept. And I know that's not the goal of today's discussion, is different ways of interaction, but I see the link myself between that and student curriculum review.
Thank you very much, Catherine. The other thing that you raise in there is something that I've picked up, that academics, even the ones that are, let's say, teaching in the same block, they don't talk to each other. They end up sometimes repeating what the other has already said. So we really are not even communicating with each other to make things easier for students. And I'm glad to see that Karabo's hand is up. Karabo is the president of the MSc. Karabo, can you say something? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. M. So I think, honestly, it is a very great initiative, and it's something that needs to happen, particularly within our school, right? But I also feel that there has been reviews, and as a student, I can say that the reason that the reviews are so low is because, honestly, as students, we don't see where our input goes to. Like a lot of my classmates, I think I can speak for them in this sense, that they really don't fill out those forms. Even when we did have the forms in person last year and the year before, it wasn't something that anyone literally took their time to actually complete. So another issue is that as a council, the time that we do bring reviews and complaints to the school and me, a lot of students do feel like that it's not really discussed and it's not taken serious because it's been presented by students. And I think that's something that needs to change, because a lot of students do have a lot of valuable input, and students are particularly understanding. They might seem unreasonable at times, but I think we really are understanding. So if maybe more initiative could be taken from the side of the school and UB to actually show students that the input does matter, because there has been a lot of instances where we brought complaints which are actually input to the school, but many of those complaints, many students feel like they fall on deaf ears. So I think that is the biggest problem. And even within that article, it really does state out a lot of things that need to happen for this to be a success. And I think if we're going to go ahead and actually venture into this, the transparency is going to be very needed. Like transparency is what's going to make it work or fail, basically, in my opinion. Because the moment students can understand, they might not like what's happening, but the moment they can understand why it's happening, they're more likely to accept it, instead of just being forced to accept certain situations whereby interaction is then going to decrease. So that's all I have to say for now. Thank you very much, Dr. M.
Thank you, thank you, Karabo. The challenge for me when I actually even started is that you come into a space where people have been teaching for so many years, and when you say this is a problem, they say, "Who are you?" Because we've been teaching for so many years. You are not in the academic space, so it becomes quite a challenge, Karabo. But I think this is the starting point of us then trying to do things the right way by involving everyone. And I think maybe, as Vesna has said, Transformation Committee will support us on this so that we can go in the right direction. Giannis?
So I just sort of actually wanted to build on what Karabo and Shira said. In terms, what Shira said is about, you know, telling the students to or inducting them into how to give feedback and why they should give feedback and so forth. And what Karabo said about, you know, they feel they're not being heard. I think so. One of the things we did, and that's also why we got a session response in every session, was not just we didn't expect it, and we made it clear that there's no expectation of getting feedback, but we did tell our students that, listen, we are going through a curriculum review process or curriculum design process, and we are listening to your feedback. We're taking that feedback and we're making changes to enhance it for the next cohort of students and so forth. And I think because they knew that they are being part of the design process, that's why they presented more feedback. So I think by inducting what Shira said, inducting them into why we get feedback and how we use that feedback will also address the you know, how is the feedback being used, and getting students to give feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. Catherine, is your hand still up? Or is
I
it?
beg your pardon. No, sorry.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you. Vesna?
So I agree with you. You know what? If we explain to the students what we are doing and how it's important, and we reinforce that, and with Krabo help and the other SRC representatives, we try to reinforce it. Perhaps they will start participating much better in these feedbacks, and we reinforce the importance of a curriculum change where the students have an impact. Maybe we will get a better results. You know, we don't know that, but we can only try. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vesna. Karabo, I've seen your response there as well. And for me, that's the area where I'm actually having serious challenge in departments, especially in the clinical space. So that's where the area has been quite a challenge. Leonard is one of our recent graduates. He's just finished his ComServe. Leonard?
Thanks, Dr. M. Apologies, I think I lost part of the discussion. My device failed me, but I'm back online. But yeah, just to pick, I think, from the previous speakers, I'm not sure if this was mentioned already or not. I think it will be then important, Dr. M, to consider a gradual introduction or engagement with the students. So even with the curriculum review, you know, for interest, I will say, for example, if we were to look at changing the preclinical curriculum first year and second year, that shouldn't be much, there shouldn't be much resistance, if I may to say, especially from the departments, because I think it's more or less controlled from the School of Clinical Medicine, with the other departments providing that those different subjects that they provide. So I think we can start there, you know, and I'll make reference, I think, to 2015. That was the year when we were in council, and that was also the time that the HPCSA was running its reviews of the curriculum medicine specifically, and there was a structure which I still believe is there, the one so-called the Council of Representatives, which is under the MSc, if I'm not mistaken, and I think the other school councils do have such a structure where then student leaders are summoned to this meeting where their input is taken into consideration. And we were part of that structure, and we did receive, the report from the HPCSA clearly outlining students' recommendations and input. So I think if the school has to go that route, it must, I think I'll echo Karabo's words here to say there must really be an effort. I think the previous speakers did mention that we will try to tell the students what exactly we're trying to do, but there must be in black and white to say this was the problem raised by students, this was the solution proposed by the students, and this is what the faculty or the department has implemented, taking into account those changes that are being suggested by the students. So I think, yeah, and perhaps Dr. M, to sort of get more buy-in from students, I think it's better to actually play the ball in the students' court, leave the ball in students' court. So give it to them that here is the curriculum, what you guys think, and then task then leadership or the student leadership to sort of channel some form of a task team or whatever committee, just as it presented in the article, to come up with something that can be then presented by the student leadership to the departments, and not to say faculty comes to students and ask for feedback, because I still think that will, all those challenges that have been raised, those challenges will still be there. But rather, faculty says, here is the curriculum, we are in a process of changing it, what is your guys' input? And we leave you with it, have your own discussions around it, and then only come back when we have had the discussions, and that will be championed by the student leadership. Thanks, Dr. M.
Thank you very much. I just want to see Karabo's comment there. Yes, Karabo, the mapping has already started, and we're hoping that after we've completed that, there'll be a review. And for me, this article, then I was saying, what I would like to see is us having a similar committee to what we see in the article. And students and the recent graduates, probably maybe, let's say, some people can take hematology, some people can take another course, or courses that talk to each other, and blocks that talk to each other, and review those. The recent graduates will tell us what worked in the clinical space when they qualified, and the current students will then tell us what is happening. So I'm looking at something like this, where there's a ladder of student participation in the curriculum design as well. So it will be the mapping is already being done, but the review, it's nice for the students to be part of that. And also then for the design, you may also come up with excellent ideas that we didn't think of, that this is what we want to do, this is how we want to teach it. And then your input also comes in there. For instance, some years back, there were students that said to me, I can actually do gaming. I would really like to take one of, let's say, a hematology lecture or something and develop it into a game. But that person at that time was shut down. But now this is what we're trying to do with Shira and them in the IPE team. So it's important for us to include students in what we're doing, because it will actually end up being something that they value. They feel that it also belongs to them, and maybe we'll get better feedback. For me, that is how I actually see this. And I've already spoken to some of the recent graduates. Leonard is one of them, Byron, Shiraz. I've just spoken to Kimberly Gutu now, and also the MSc. I think we really need to create or start having a team like that. I know with the current ones, it's hectic with the load, but maybe the ones that are already in the workspace can also assist to make the load much easier, because it's important for students and recent graduates to get involved in the review and the creation of the curriculum going forward. Because we've tried it our way for many years, traditional PBL, but we still didn't end up with exactly what we'd like to have. And I think we are unique compared to other countries. We always try to follow what other countries are doing, but we can still do our own. That will work for us, and yet the students can end up being, can compete with anyone all over the globe. Thank you. I think maybe I'll stop there, but if there's any other last comments, I would like to hear them. Okay, Professor Cook, I see no hands.
So, unfortunately, I had to. Yeah, thank you for a very interesting session. I definitely think it's very important that we start thinking about how we can incorporate students in the curriculum design process. So I think this was a very, very valuable session. So next week, Dr. Mokachani and Dr. Hartman will do a learning workshop, taking this and what was done in Loop a bit further. So the next session, would be a curriculum workshop. And the one thing that Prof. Cook didn't mention in the beginning of the session is that after that, we also decided to work on our teaching portfolios. And Shira mentioned something around that, you know, how you can use the feedback to work into your teaching portfolio. And so every fourth session would be around a teaching portfolio. So we basically have the structure of 3+1. And then thank you so much for joining. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much, Yanis, for inviting us. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so. Bye.
Thanks, Manto. Lovely session. Cheers.
Thanks, Shira.